After profiling, you may want to see if there are any fields you need to manually convert. For example, a date field. Remember I said that sometimes the Data Analyzer node doesn't convert a field the way you want it to. Well, date fields are the prime example of that. Most times, the Data Analyzer node doesn't know how to deal with dates, so it will convert it to a string, when in actuality, you need it to be a date. So I will show you how you can convert dates to a date data type. Let's take a look at the account payments data. There are two date fields I want to convert: the transaction date and payment date. First, I need to see what my date format currently looks like. It looks like the format is 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day. For this, I add my filter node and enter my script. First, I will use the override omit statement to change the transaction date field using a date function combined with a date parameter. I need to make sure to enter the date format coming into the node. That would be the 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day format. When using the 4-digit year, you'll want to use CC as the year's century and YY as the year's year. When converting fields to a date data type, there are a few things to keep in mind. The BrainScript format you will use is field name .date current date string format. Remember I said that with functions, sometimes you won't need a parameter to, and sometimes you will. This is one of those times you will need a second parameter. Inside the parentheses, you will need to use the date format coming into the input, not how you want it outputted. This will help the application recognize which part of the string is year, month, and day. LAE outputs dates according to ISO standard, CCYY-MM-DD. You will need to use specific format parameters when stating the current date time. These parameters can be found in the BrainScript help in Brie by clicking the Help toolbar drop-down and selecting BrainScript. Let's format the payment date field. Now I name my node and run it. Looks like my node produced an error. When I hover over the node, I see that there are dates with slashes that do not match the dash format I entered into the script. What I need to do to fix this is split the different formats, convert them separately, and then combine them back together. Let's start with the split. For this, I'm going to add a split node. A split node is a special type of filter that splits the data based on a defined condition. I'm going to split the data by dash versus slash. For this, I'm going to use the isDate function to identify one of the date formats for the transaction and payment dates. In this case, the dashes. Now I name my node and run it. I have successfully split the data. The split node produces two pins. The first, or true pin, are all records that match the expression I entered into the node. The second, or false pin, are all records that don't. So for this demo, if I look at the first pin, I see all dates that have dashes. And if I look at the second pin, I see all dates that have slashes. Now I need to convert each of the date formats separately, starting with the dashes. I'm going to rejoin my original filter node. Since the node already has my script from before, all I have to do is rerun it. And now it runs successfully. If I look at the BRD viewer, I see that the fields have converted to a date data type. Now I move on to the slashes. I'm going to copy my original filter node and use it as a starting point for the slashes. But first, let me see what my current date format is. Looks like it's 2-digit day, 2-digit month, and 4-digit year. So now I update my code with the current date format. Now I run the node. Looks like I got an error. When I look at the error, it tells me I have a transaction date with a lowercase o, and therefore it doesn't match my date format. To fix this, I'm going to change the text case. What this does is ensure that anywhere where there's an O in the date, it has the same case. This way I can eliminate them all at once. I'm going to start by bringing in a new filter node. To change the case of the text, you can use one of two functions. ToUpper makes the text uppercase. ToLower makes the text lowercase. Inside of the filter node, for the transaction date field, the first thing I'm going to do is have all the letters in that field change to uppercase. Then I'm going to replace all instances of O with 0. The replace function allows you to find part of a string and replace it with another one. Notice, instead of creating a new row for the second function, I just added it to the same row. When using functions, you have the ability to use multiple functions in a single row. Additional functions are applied to the result of the previously applied function. In this case, once the script runs the ToUpper function to make all O's uppercase, it will run the replace function to change the O's to 0. Let's name and run the node. Now I'm going to rejoin my filter node. Since the node is already configured, I just have to rerun it. Looks like I got another error. Let's see what this one says. It says this time I have a payment date with an uppercase O, and therefore it doesn't match my date format. Going back one step, I'm going to use the same ToUpper and replace script as before, this time for the payment date. Now I rerun. Going back to the filter node with the date conversion, I'm going to rerun this node. Another error. Let's see what this one says. It says that my date format for the payment date field doesn't match an entry that only has a single digit for the day. This is an easy one to fix. All I have to do is remove one of the D's for the payment date. Now I rerun the node. A successful run. If I look at the BRD viewer, the dates have been converted. While this process may have been the extreme to preparing a date, it shows you all the different steps you may need to take to convert a field properly. Now that I've fixed the date formats individually, I need to bring them back together again. For that, I'm going to use a cat node. The cat node combines multiple, 2 or more, input sources into a single output. However, notice that the cat node only has one input pin, but I have 2 input sources. This is an easy fix to make. First, I join the first input source. Then, for the second input source, I simply drag the input over the cat node. I want to make sure the node is highlighted before I drop the drag. Once I do, it automatically creates a second input pin. You would repeat this process if you had more sources you needed to join. When combining data, you have 3 options available to you. The default option is exact. For exact, the columns for all inputs must be the same. Union takes all columns across all inputs, filling in null for missing columns. Intersection only takes columns common to all inputs. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say you have 2 data sets that look like this. Because the columns do not match, the exact option would error out. If you chose union, the data will combine, producing 4 records, and filling in nulls for the data that does not match. If you chose intersection, the data will combine, producing 4 records for only those columns that match. In this case, C1 and C2. I'm going to keep the default option of exact and run the node. I have successfully combined the data. Now all of my data has been combined. While preparing the data or anywhere else in the graphing process, you can group nodes into a composite to help save on design space. Let's say I wanted to take all the nodes I used to format the date in the account payments data and group them into a composite. I start by highlighting all the nodes. Then I click on the Group Selected Nodes icon on the BRE main toolbar. Now I can name my node and click OK. To view the nodes in the composite, simply double-click. From here, you can edit the underlying nodes. For example, I want to add an output to the cat node so I can join this composite with the rest of the graph I'm going to build. To do that, I simply click the cat node, go to Insert, and select Output. An output pin is added. To go back to the main graph, I can use the breadcrumbs and click the top of graph icon. Now, if I wanted to edit the composite, I can't double-click. This would open the underlying nodes and not the edit window. So, in order to edit this node, I have to right-click on it and select Edit. This gives me my edit window. One of the great things you can do is name the input and output pins. This helps you identify what data is coming into the node and what data is leaving the node. To name the pins, click the I/O or Input/Output tab. To name the pins, I simply click in the name field. Let's start with the input pin, then the output pin. Now I click OK. Let's see what they look like. My pins are named. You can name pins for any node within LAE, not just a composite. And that's how you convert dates to a date data type.